Most people know Jermaine O'Neal as a good basketball player who was involved in the Malice at the Palace, and most people acknowledge that the Pacers would have probably won the 2005 NBA championship if it were not for the Malice at the Palace. But most people do not talk about how that event led to the downfall of Jermaine O'Neal's MVP chances and Hall of Fame chance. Jermaine O'Neal was born in South Carolina, where he would play high school basketball. His freshman year, he was actually a guard who was 6'4", athletic, could handle the ball well, and shoot threes. But after growing 5 inches, he would become a big man who added elite defense to his list of skills that were already impressive as a near 7-footer who could handle the ball like a guard. Jermaine earned a spot on the McDonald's All-American team, but due to poor SAT scores, O'Neal might not have been able to play college basketball. So Jermaine declared for the NBA draft straight out of high school. He was picked 17th overall in 1996 by the Portland Trail Blazers, where he would have a slow start to his career. After averaging 3 points and 3 rebounds per game in his entire career as a Portland Trail Blazer, with no secure spot in the rotation, Jermaine would go on to say, quote, "Sometimes I would sit on the bench with tears in my eyes." And that pretty much sums up his whole situation in Portland. Meanwhile, in Indianapolis, the Pacers were retooling an aging core that had recently lost in the NBA Finals to the Lakers. To put in perspective how old the Pacers were getting, in the year 2000 they had 7 players born in the 1960s, with all of them being rotational players. So the Pacers decided to go young and trade Dale Davis for Jermaine. Many Pacers fans disliked this move at first, but Pacers executive Donnie Walsh knew Jermaine's guard skills as a big would make him into one of the best players in the NBA. And in his first season as a starter, he averaged a near double-double along with 2.8 blocks per game, while the Pacers only went 41-41. But the next season they would acquire several good pieces, one of them being Ron Artest. Jermaine was now playing with one of the best defenders in the NBA in Ron Artest and would make his first All-Star team. But the Pacers were still mediocre, going 42-40 and losing in the first round for the second straight year. But in 2002, Jermaine would cement himself as the Pacers' new face of the franchise, making his second consecutive All-Star team and averaging a double-double while being a top-tier defender who was underrated by the national media. The season started out good for the Pacers in 2002 as the team played well, but after Brad Miller got injured, the Pacers would skid and lose in the first round once again. But that offseason, Jermaine would sign a 7-year, $126 million contract with the Pacers. And in the 2003 to 2004 season, Jermaine would finish third in MVP voting as the Pacers went 61-21, but lost in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Detroit Pistons. So, in 04 to 05, the Pacers would acquire Steven Jackson to create the best defensive team in the NBA. But that season, the Pacers would be involved in the infamous Malice at the Palace, where even though the Piston players were the ones who started the fight and were the first to lose their cool, and despite the Pistons fans treating the Pacers players like livestock by throwing food and drinks on them, the Pacers were given over 130 games in total suspensions, while the Pistons were given just 9. Artest was out for the year and now wanted out of Indy entirely. Steven Jackson was out for most of the season, and Jermaine was suspended 15 games while the Pacers struggled. Jermaine would still average his regular numbers and make an All-Star team, but he was never truly treated the same. He posted career-high scoring numbers in 2005, but all anyone would talk about was the Malice at the Palace. And the Pacers team's success would only decline after losing guys like Artest and eventually losing Steven Jackson, and Reggie Miller would retire as well. So, with the Pacers core decimated, all that was left was Jermaine O'Neal. And from the 05-06 season to the 07-08 season, Jermaine would slowly decline, still making 2 more All-Star teams, but would regress majorly in 2008. Injured and tired, O'Neal would be traded to Toronto, and would bounce around the NBA until his final year in 2014. Now, you still might need further explanation as to how O'Neal's decline was linked to that one night in November of 2004. Well, let's think about this. Fresh off finishing third in MVP voting, why would O'Neal put up similar numbers for the next 2 seasons but still never find himself finishing high on the ballot? Because the same media who vote on the MVP award also reported on the so-called nasty and thuggish Indiana Pacers. They could never look at Jermaine the same, and Jermaine could never look at himself the same. He has said that he always felt like there was a piece of him left in the Palace until they demolished it. The Pacers never got close to their postseason success in 2004, and so with no media help, no championship or even contention hopes, and Jermaine battling mental issues, he would never be the same again and would never win an MVP. And think about this as well. Jermaine is a 6-time All-Star and 3-time All-NBA selection, which has been regarded as not enough to make it into the Hall of Fame. But what if we added an MVP or possibly a championship? Now that resume would most likely get Jermaine in the Hall of Fame, or at the very least put his jersey number up in the rafters of the fieldhouse where he once commanded all 20,000 in attendance to cheer for him and his championship caliber team. Jermaine will probably only ever get the respect he deserves from Pacers fans. But let his story be a lesson on how the media and general public can effectively blackball a person for something that wasn't even their fault. I'm Limitless Pulls. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe and come back for the next video.
Same fucking bitches, got the chopsticks with extensions on my dick, cause I like